Welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior and attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am so excited to bring to you today Michael Zipursky. And tell me, Michael, is that the way that you say your last name? I should have asked
You,
you.
yeah, you're
Zipursky?
close. It's there you go. You got it. Second time. Perfect.
Zipursky. All right. So welcome to Michael Zipursky. Michael and I met through a group that I just joined a few weeks back, and his experience is phenomenal. I'm super excited to have Michael here today. And for the folks listening, he's going to be the perfect fit for you. And Michael, I know that you don't know me that well yet, but I serve largely coaches, consultants, online educators, and expert speakers and authors. And these are all folks that need to hear what you have to say. But Michael is the CEO of Consulting Success and Coach to Consultants. He has advised organizations like Financial Times, Dow Jones, RBC, and helped Panasonic launch new products into global markets. But more importantly, he's helped over 400 consultants from around the world in over 75 industries add 6 and 7 figures to their annual revenues. Over 35,000 consultants read his weekly consulting newsletter. Michael is also the author of the Amazon bestsellers Act Now: How Successful Consultants Thrive During Chaos and Uncertainty. That sounds like the perfect book that everybody needs to be picking up currently. The Elite Consulting Mind and Consulting Success, the book. Michael will include your gift and some additional contact information for you on the show notes. So stay tuned because we'll give you that link in just a bit. Here's some fun facts about Michael. He has been building consulting businesses for 20 years. He has started 6 companies, sold 2, and made his first million by the time he was 31. He has also competed against an Olympian, which I'm curious to hear about. He speaks Japanese. We were just swapping travel stories. And then I love this. A green smoothie is his go-to in the morning. So Michael, welcome. I'm already such a fan, and I don't even know you that well yet.
All
So,
right.
so happy to have you.
Hey, Heather. Yeah, thanks so much. Great to be here with you.
Yeah. So talk to us about how you got started in the consulting world.
Okay, I thought you were going to say talk to us about your green smoothie in the morning.
Well, that too. I do want to hear what goes into your green smoothie. I've tried
Uh,
quite a variety.
yeah, well, that's more my wife's doing, but I'm happy to tell you what she puts in it every day, and it's a lot of goodness, and it's always fun to try and get our daughters to drink that, but we figured out how to make that happen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is
Yeah.
this the happy green smoothie? Like you're happy to drink it down, or is this the, quickly chug the green smoothie?
No, this is a good green smoothie. But for my wife and I mean, we'd probably be okay even if it wasn't the sweet one. But to get our daughters, or especially our older daughter, to drink it, it requires a little bit of finesse, a little bit more banana and an apple. And excuse my voice, I've been talking a lot here today, so it might I think yeah, it might be a little bit not as clear as usual, but hopefully it'll be clear for everyone.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. And I similarly I've had a gruff voice for about a week, and I have no idea if it's because I launched a podcast and I'm doing like many interviews a day on top of my regular work, which is a lot of calls. But I laugh because my sister, who has always had a slightly deeper voice than mine, like even as a kid, I had teachers that like teased her a little bit about having this deep bedroom voice. And
Mm.
I feel like the last week I've gone down a notch and I've got this gruffness. So I'm right there with
There
you.
you
But
go. Awesome. So you want to know how I got into the consulting business?
yeah, in the consulting world.
Sure. So I started with my cousin Sam, who to this day is my business partner. We've built, as you mentioned, many businesses together over the years. Just out of high school, we started our kind of the first company together, and that was in kind of the web design and development area back in the early days of that. And that was a great experience. And then about a year and a half or two later, we started our second company, which was called Kankei Culture. Kankei Culture, Kankei in Japanese means relationship. So essentially a relationship culture. We've always been very big on long-term thinking and building relationships with people. And that's kind of the way the business should be done, or at least focused on. And so we worked with all kinds of different businesses in Vancouver when we started that company. But when I went into university after my first year, I actually decided to go over to Japan. And I ended up actually opening up our branch office for that company over there, and had a really great opportunity to work with some very large organizations as you mentioned, like Panasonic or Sumitomo, Omron, a whole bunch of other, multi-billion-dollar organizations, really helping them with their English language communications and marketing materials for those English language markets. And so I spent about 5-6 years building that business over there. And when I came back to North America, I started a separate or a new consulting business, this time really focused on lead generation for professional services firms. And so our clients were actually law firms, they were investment companies, insurance businesses, other consulting firms, and really just got to kind of see what it was like to help others to generate leads, which was something that continued to be in demand and people are always looking for. And so around that time, both Sam and I, we had done a few businesses together, but we were kind of doing our separate thing. And actually we were at a family barbecue one day and we said, you know what, it'd be really great to do another company together, but this time we should do it online because we both love travel and we both love seeing the world and cultures and all that kind of stuff. And my wife, who's Japanese, at that time wasn't my wife, but I was, spending more time in Japan and I'm a big family guy. So I had this vision even at that stage that I wanted to ensure that we could always go back to Japan and spend time with her family. This was before kids and so forth. So we said, let's start something online. We didn't really know what we were going to do initially, but we decided let's put out some examples and kind of stories from the trenches of what it's like to build a consulting business. And so we shared a lot of content, I was writing a lot of articles just of what was working, but also what wasn't working, really as a way to provide value, hoping that people could gain and avoid some of the the mistakes that we'd made. We didn't have a clear monetization plan. We just thought we'd put it out there and see what happens. And the response was pretty significant, so much so that we saw our numbers kind of in web analytics climbing every single month. And then we had a lot of people saying, okay, this is really great, free content, articles that you're putting out there. Do you guys have a course that we can go deeper into? And we said, no, we don't, but let's build one. So we put together a course all about how you can become, kind of take your skills, your knowledge, your experience, and then transition that into becoming a consultant. And that did very well. And then people said, okay, we have the course, this is really good, but can we work with you directly? Is there some way that we can, you can coach us? And we said, well, yeah, we don't have a coaching program, but let's build one. And so we created a coaching program. So fast forward to today, we've now been running Consulting Success for almost 11 years. We've had over 7,000 consultants go through our training programs. We've personally worked with over 400 consultants in many different industries all around the world, really helping them to optimize their consulting business models and put marketing systems in place, and really to grow businesses that allow them to make a great impact while having a lot of freedom and a great income at the same time.
I love that. There's a couple pieces that I want to dig into. One, I love your approach. I mean, even and you'll have to remind me the word in Japanese, but the
Kanke.
Relational, yes.
Kanke, yeah.
Kanke with a K, yep. Kanke. Yeah, I love that. I mean, that you guys had the vision to focus on that aspect. It sounds like, even from the start. And going back to starting your first business right out of high school, how did you decide to do that?
Well, it started even before then. So actually, when I was 15, I went to Vietnam. So my cousin Sam is about 3 years older than I am. And so he was 18, I was 15. And, I think you'll appreciate this being a lawyer, but I had to convince and persuade my parents to allow just the two of us to go to Vietnam. And this is back when Vietnam was only open to foreigners, to the outside world for 7 years. Like it had only been 7 years since they opened it to the world. So it was quite new. Very few people were going. And we actually we started in the north. So we started in Hanoi and then we went all the way up to Lao Cai, right on the Chinese border. So there I was, this 15-year-old, seeing the world. And as you and I were speaking before, I was originally born in Toronto, but my parents at a young age moved us to Israel. And so when I came back to North America, I really felt like an outsider. And that's a whole other story I'm happy to get into. But the main thing was that I've always had an appreciation for different languages and different cultures. And so there we were in Vietnam, and Sam and I were just talking about, like, we should do some kind of business together. And we didn't know what it was, but Sam was very, he's the creative guy, more the kind of the strategy and management guy. And we thought, well, at that time, Sam was actually starting to DJ and we were both into music. And so we said, let's start a record label. So I actually had bought a book about that, and we came up with a whole idea. We came up with a name. It didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything with it, but we got excited about it. And what that led to, though, was that when we came back, when I was finishing up high school, we started that first company, which was called Fingertip Media. We should have kept the domain name, but we got rid of it a long time ago. I think it's a pretty good one. But that was that was where we started, right? It was
Yeah.
just kind of that experience of uh, just taking different, I guess, experiences or things that we had seen, and we were excited from a young age. Like even before that time, I was starting to study a little bit about business. I was reading books.
Mm.
I was never into academics in high school. In fact, I didn't read a full book until I was in grade 10. I always read those, like, I think they're called Cole's Notes, those like summary books. And I was not a good student because my whole background was sports. And so that's kind of the tie
Mm.
into the whole competing against the Olympian thing, which is that I
Mm-hmm.
was very competitive in track and field, but not, if you look at me now, you might think, oh yeah, you were probably a runner. Well, no, I was actually much bigger than I am today. And I was doing shot put and javelin and discus. And I competed, I was top in all of Vancouver City, but I made it to the provincial, so like state. And there I was typically either second, so silver or bronze, but I could never win the gold because I was competing against this guy named Dylan Armstrong, and Dylan Armstrong went on to get a bronze medal in the Beijing Olympics, and he was a mutant of a guy. He was massive even at that age. So yeah. Anyways, that's kind of my story of how I got into all this stuff.
No, I love it. I mean, it brings up a couple questions for me. But first, the funny thing is, so I did track for 1 year, like my last year of high school. I actually had gotten stress fractures down both the front of my shins, playing
Mm,
volleyball and running, and so I was overly active, but I had stopped spring volleyball because I couldn't jump. The jumping and the repetition was just like it was killing me. And so
yeah.
I stopped, but I was like, well, I can't run in track, even though that's what I wanted to do, but I can learn to throw. So for a year, I did discus and shot put and
Nice.
javelin in track. Yeah. It turns out that I couldn't place for the most part in shot put and javelin, but I could regularly place in discus. So I could
Well,
get that down.
yeah.
But it was a fun little experiment. I have a huge amount of respect for people who are really good throwers because, like my sister, who's quite a bit smaller than me and younger, but when she went through high school, she ended up being a javelin thrower and she could wing that thing. And she was small.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, it takes a massive amount of technique
Heather,
and
as
strength.
we're talking right now, just one thing to share for all your audience, because as I've gotten older and raising kids and all that kind of stuff, I hear these concerns that parents have around, oh, my kid they're not reading, or they're not doing this, or they're not doing that.
Mm,
But what's interesting is, like, if I look back, uh, again, I didn't read a book, and like a full book, until grade 10. And the first book that I read was, I think, The Godfather, and then Shogun or something like that, like, big, thick,
right,
500-page books.
right.
And then, fast forward to this day, like I've written 3 best-selling books, 1,000 articles, like it just. So just for everyone out there, if you have kids and you're looking at them and you're going, I'm concerned because they're not, it doesn't mean that what you see right now is what's going to happen in the future. So I just wanted to raise that. I know maybe it's going off topic, but hopefully it can help some people.
No, I love that. It's a really valid point. And I mean, I'm a parent. I've got two children. One is 7 and special needs, right? And one is still 2, and she's feisty as all get out. But it's a lot of fun. And as a parent, you can't help but worry sometimes because if you don't have other kids the same, like it's really hard to know what's typical, what's within
Sure.
the range, right? We all want our children to do well, but I echo what you have just said, which is that I came from a family of 6, and I remember periods where my mom was extremely worried about, like, one of my sisters who was really late to even begin to read.
Mm,
Like my mom thought she needed to be in special education, and she didn't even like walk until she was like 3. You know what I mean? And
mm,
so everything was delayed, and she is perfectly fine as an adult. She's a
yeah,
brilliant teacher. She teaches kids, like I joke right now in the middle of COVID that her household, and she's now mom of 4 girls, is the only household in the world probably that is actually like she's doing a better job at home with her girls all at home than school could ever do for her
right.
kids,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And my mom was so worried about her. So I agree. Like kids, and the same is true for some other siblings that just had things going on and totally approached it at their own pace, and that's just how it goes. But I love that. I love that reminder, and I think it's really important for all of us who are in the parenting zone. Um, so a question I have for you, it sounds like the entrepreneurial instinct was strong in you even pretty young.
hmm
Would
yeah.
you say that you come by it naturally?
Um, I don't know if, so I guess part of it, my answer would be yes. Like
Okay.
my initial response would be yes. But I think that comes not from a place of entrepreneurship. It comes from my background is sports, right? From a young age. And I think that started because when I came back to North America, I didn't speak the language, like I didn't speak English. That's not my first language. And as I mentioned to you, I really felt like an outsider. I felt like I had to prove myself. And the way that I
Mm,
tried to establish myself as, like a boy, I got into sports. And so I was very, very competitive from a young age. And then even when I then went into college, I remember that there were certain like programs I studied. It was an Asian and business studies initially 2-year diploma that I did before I did the 4-year degree. And there was a part of that program that I didn't want to do. It's like every course was about, it was geography and culture and language, which was all good. But I also wanted to take business classes. I wanted to take
mm,
international law. I wanted to take marketing. I want all these things. But that wasn't part of the program.
mm.
But to me, if I want something, then I'm going to just go after it until I get it. And so I remember I talked to the head of the program. I said, listen, here's why I want to do these things. Here's why I think it's important. He said, okay, well, listen, if you write down and you kind of give me a nice letter explaining why this is so important to you, I'll see what I can do. And so I did. And I changed that program. And another friend of mine kind of came along. And so we both took these other classes. Another example is even before that, when I was trying to save money so that I could travel to Vietnam, I did all kinds of jobs. And the way that I would get a job, this is, before being able to go online and, apply for things, I would pick up, remember like that big Yellow Pages book? Some people remember those,
Yes.
right? You'd use them to like raise up your computer monitor or whatever.
Yes.
So I would open that up and I would just go to like a section like landscaping or whatever it was. And I would just pick up the phone and I'd call every single company on every single page until someone would give me a job. Be like, do you have any, are you hiring? Are you hiring? Are you hiring? That I think is what really has served me well when it comes to entrepreneurship, because I'm persistent, but
Mm.
I'm disciplined. I won't give up, and so I don't judge success instantly. I'm not expecting to get results right away, but what I am expecting is that I'm going to figure out and get what I want, as long as I'm not, as long as I'm truly committed to it. And so I think that commitment has really played the biggest kind of part in, with the success that we've had, or what we've been able to accomplish. And it's an important lesson that I've learned and I've shared with many clients over the years. The difference between being interested and being committed. Those that are interested might make plans and they're thinking things and all that kind of stuff, but those that are committed are the ones that are actually taking action.
No, I love that, and I think it's a huge part of anybody on their path, whether it's personal development, whether it's business, right? The
Correct.
difference between being interested and being committed is really the thing that makes it or breaks it. I was just wondering if you have found, like in your work with all these consultants, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you can tell us a little bit more about who your clients are. Like in my mind, I'm wondering, are they folks that are trying to leave the corporate world and go out on their own, or are
Right.
they entrepreneurs that have previously done other things and they now really have found their true love? I think some people keep themselves out of the entrepreneurial marketplace thinking like, oh, doesn't feel like a natural fit. I want to, but it doesn't, like I didn't have a parent that was an entrepreneur. I wasn't trained in this, or,
Yeah.
I don't know about how to do
Right.
it. How would you describe the folks that you work with? Are they on both sides of that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So yes, I mean we have two kind of parts to our business and who we work with. The first is those who are currently employees or in corporate, and they want to transition
Mm,
into starting a consulting business and become consultants, or they're new consultants and they're really looking for kind of a proven process and system to help them to make that transition successfully and fast. The second group are those that are really looking to move their business to that next level, and that might range from anyone that might be doing, 6 figures all the way up to 3 million, $4 million per year in
mm,
annual revenues. And so we support those two different groups. But I think in terms of your question, it's a really good one. People who are thinking about making that leap and can they really be successful? And so here's what I found is that we have a lot of clients who would definitely consider themselves to be introverts, or to be people that are
mm,
technical and they're not the most comfortable with the idea of promoting themselves, right? Marketing, and that's okay, right? But what really the distinction and observation that I have between those that are successful and those that struggle is whether or not you're actually willing to you know to become a business owner. And so you can be a consultant, right? You can label yourself as a consultant, but essentially if you break down the way that you're working, you're really a contractor, right? You really have a job. You might have one client or a couple clients. You're going from one project to the next. But your main focus, if you're in that first camp, is doing the work, right? The deliverables. That's not a business owner, right? Yes, you could be called a consultant, but you don't have a business, you have a job. The second group is those that really look at themselves what we call like an entrepreneurial consultant or a consulting business owner. And yes, they're focused on delivering and providing great value to their clients and serving at the highest level, but they're also focused on and they recognize the importance of marketing and of spending time building their business. And to do that, you often have to kind of cross that bridge of, like an uncomfortable kind of river below you where you're venturing into uncharted territory. You're doing things that you're not used to doing. And that requires, sending emails to people or reaching out to people that you don't know or picking up the phone, right? Doing things that, again, you're maybe not comfortable to do, but they're the things that actually help you to build your business. And so even though some people might not feel comfortable with this idea of promoting themselves and doing marketing because they're introverts or they're quiet people or they tend to focus more on doing the work, once someone has made that decision in their mind, they've kind of expanded their mindset to, okay, yeah, I really want to build a business here that creates more value, that's more long-term, more freedom, more impact, more income, then it doesn't matter whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Once you've made that commitment to yourself and to your family or whoever it is that you're doing this for, then it doesn't matter where you're coming from. You can be successful, right? Because you start taking those steps. And the interesting thing about business is once you start doing things that might even be uncomfortable for you, you start seeing results, right? You start going, wow, okay, that wasn't that hard, or wow, that actually worked. And so now what previously was uncomfortable becomes comfortable, or at least more comfortable. And so I empathize with those who find that challenging. But if you actually really want to build a business, then you need to be prepared to start doing some things that may not be the most comfortable for you right away, knowing that the outcome of, or the reason that you're doing that is a strong enough driver to help you to do those or to take those steps.
No, I love that. And I think, remembering and reminding people this idea, I think regularly as humans, we crave homeostasis, right? We want comfort. Like the innate part of us wants to be comfortable, be safe, we want sameness. And yet the only way to get what we want is to continually make ourselves uncomfortable, like
Correct.
really in every area.
Yeah, people, as you said, like they want to remain comfortable or stable, right? But the reality is, there's no such thing as staying in the same place. You're either going up or you're going down because the marketplace is always moving. And so even though you might feel like, okay, yeah, I'm at a good place, I'm just going to stay where I am, you're not. Even if you stay where you are, the market is moving. And so some people will be investing in themselves and taking actions and taking steps. So that means that they're now moving up, which just means that you're moving down. It's a seesaw, right? And
Right.
it doesn't stay. So it's
That's
important just to
right.
recognize that if you want to actually remain where you are, you have to keep doing things. And if you want to go up, then keep doing even more things or doing more of the right things. But you can't just stay where you are.
That's right. It's like trying to stay in the same spot in the middle of a river, right? You're going to move in one direction or the other. So it sounds like you're saying for anybody that wants to become a consultant, grow, really not give themselves a job, but grow a business, that with the right steps, with the right plan, even if they're uncomfortable, even if they're introverts, like there's a path where if you follow the path,
Yeah.
you're way more likely to get there, right?
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. And I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that everyone should go down that path, right? Everyone's different. And it's important that people ultimately, go down the path that's going to serve them best and create the
Mhm.
lifestyle that they want and connect with what's meaningful for them. But if you want to be successful, if you want to have a successful consulting business, in this case, since we're talking about consulting, you can certainly do it as long as you're prepared to make those, to make that commitment and then to take the actions that are necessary. And the reality is that anything good, means that you have to work hard or that you have to
Mhm.
do things you haven't done before. Because if you already did it, like you would already know what it's like. But since you want to achieve new things, you have to do things that you haven't done before. And many of the things that are actually going to create the most value are often the things that are uncomfortable to do.
Right. Well, and based on your vast experience helping so many people cross that bridge, right? We'll just call it the bridge over the
Sure.
uncomfortable river. What do you find? Talk to us about a couple of the biggest blocks that you see that keep either people feeling stuck in their business or not making progress. What are people doing wrong really frequently?
Okay, so there's a few things here that I would bring up. The first is being too general. So more specifically, what I mean there is it's very common to see people who have come from the corporate world or been employees or been in different businesses, and they have, truthfully, they have a lot of different, experiences and skills and areas of expertise. And so, how do they take all of that and narrow it down? And so, for a lot of people, they're very uncomfortable trying to narrow it down because they feel like they're actually going to lose opportunity. But in business building, and especially when you are getting started and you don't have $1 billion in your bank to just throw stuff and see what sticks, the more folks you are, the better, right? So you can either choose to be like a minnow in a vast ocean, which is a generalist, or you can choose to be that large fish, right, a big fish in a small pond, and that's the specialist, that's the expert. And that is, even though for a lot of people it feels kind of counterintuitive, it's like, well, decreasing, getting more focused doesn't not mean that I have less opportunity, but actually by getting focused, you're going to create a lot more opportunity. You're going to be able to dial in not only who your ideal client is and be able to find them and identify them and contact them, and start conversation with them much more readily. But your messaging will also resonate significantly more because your messaging can now be tailored specifically to that person. And so a lot of people, they try marketing or their attempt at marketing or their attempt at messaging, and they go like, yeah, I'm not really seeing traction. I don't really know why. It's because they're casting a very wide net. It's like, yeah, I'm a business consultant. Well, what does that mean? Right? Oh, I do leadership. Well, what does that mean? So getting really specific about who do you really help, right? Who are they? What are the problems they have? What are the results you help to enable? What's that outcome? And then why should they choose you? Like, what's unique about what you bring to the table? So that would be the first thing that I would mention, is just getting very clear on that part. I think the other one that comes up a lot is, just in the sense of like perfectionism, right? People are, and especially I see this with consultants that we work with. I think a lot of people in professional services, or just professionals in general, when you're coming from like the corporate world, you have a lot of hesitation around putting things out there because you want stuff to be perfect. So it's like, I want to get my business plan just right. My website has to be just perfect. My messaging has to be on point. This, that, I need all these, I don't have a business card yet, so I can't go out there. So people create all these reasons not to go out into the marketplace and not to kind of, share with the world what they're thinking or doing or planning to do. And that's the worst thing that you can actually do, because the reality is perfection does not exist. The moment that you get closer to where you think perfection is, you'll realize that you actually want to do something different or move to that next level. And so, as I like to say, like, progress is much better than perfection. And the other thing that I often talk about is, thinking does not create results, action does. And if you want to make better choices or better decisions, if you want to really be able to identify what to optimize and where to make improvements, you need to get feedback from the marketplace. And so essentially, the more data that you can collect, the more, the better the decisions that you can make, because you have more data, you can identify what's working, what isn't. But you can't get that data if you're just thinking. If you're just, in your office or home office or whatever it is, and you're just playing with your website or updating your business plan or, writing content, if you're just doing those things, you're not getting feedback from the marketplace. And so that's actually what can help a lot of people, is don't worry about things being just perfect. Identify who you believe your ideal client is, and then start having conversations with them as quickly as you can. The more of that you do, the more information you'll have to actually make better decisions for your messaging, for your website, for your products, for your offering, for, all that kind of stuff.
No, I love that. And for anybody listening, I mean, the power of those three fundamentals that Michael just covered are huge. I remember, so I hired a business coach really early on in the process of launching my second business, right? And he gave me some really good advice. And, part of it was about being very, very targeted. And
Mm-hmm.
luckily, the first thing that I chose ended up working well for me,
Yeah.
right? So, but do you sometimes find that people have to change that niche or have to test it in the marketplace and then retest it, try it again? So maybe they had intended to work with this particular niche, but the messaging was off, or the niche wasn't there. Like, talk to us
Yeah.
about that
Sure.
part of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you're hitting on something really important here, which is, this is a journey, right? So often people are focused on the destination, and they're yearning for results and like instant gratification, and that's understandable, because in the world that we live, it's like you can pretty much get almost anything instantly. But in business, it doesn't work that way. You need to be prepared to put in the work. And so, yeah, sure, sometimes people try things and it doesn't click, it doesn't resonate, but actually, I was just talking to a colleague earlier today, and he said that in the U.S., every year there's over 400,000 patents that are filed, yet only 2% of them actually go to the market. Just think about that, right? Like
Mm,
there's a lot of activity, but not a lot of it lands. Well, your chances in business to succeed, I believe, are significantly higher if you do the right things. But it doesn't mean that everything that you do will work out of the box right away. And if you're going to judge success by, whether you're able to hit a home run the first time you step up to the plate, you're not going to last in business. But if
mm-hmm.
you look at it like, well, to get into the Hall of Fame, you can still strike out 7 out of 10 times, right? Like 300% batting average, and that's Hall of Fame kind of status. Like that's that level. That means you're striking out 7 out of 10 times. Yet a lot of people look at and they step up to the plate, they strike out once, and they go, oh, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Maybe they take another swing. Oh, 2 times, yeah, this is clearly not for me, and they give up. They go home, right? Or they jump to like the new shiny object or the new whatever it is, and go, I think this is better because this looks more exciting, right? And that's the fight or flight kind of mindset, right? That it's just pulling people into different directions because they can't be focused enough. But once you go, this is okay. I'm just going to stand up at the plate. I'm going to keep swinging. I'm going to keep, if I struck out that time, that's okay. And then let me figure out what I do wrong. How can I improve? And then you improve. And all of a sudden you start hitting singles, doubles, triples, home runs, whatever. I don't know why I'm choosing baseball, but, you're in Seattle and,
It's a good one. I got a hubby and a son who love baseball, so it's a
there
good
you go, right?
analogy for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully it resonates with some people, but
Yeah.
we don't have a major league team here. But anyways, so I think that's the way that I look at it, is that even though you try things, like, don't expect it to work right away. But the most important thing is that you're willing to shift, or as they say in the in the startup world, to pivot. And that's why having conversations in the marketplace is so important. I'm not a fan of the word mistake. A lot of people, or failure. People go like, oh yeah, I'm so scared to fail. There's no such thing as failure in that sense. As long as you pick yourself up and you take from that experience, it's a learning experience. And in fact, what I've observed in conversation and heard in conversation as well from so many successful people over the years is that if you quote unquote fail, that's great. Like the faster and the more that you can fail, it means the more that you're learning, and you can then identify very quickly what doesn't work. So you're now closer and closer to what does work. And I think that's why I've also seen over the years so many people who don't necessarily have the educational or the academic, quote unquote smarts. And so you'll see people that aren't as like smart as you, yet they're significantly more successful. How can that be? Well, it's because society has, trained many people to think that education or whatever it is actually what equals success, but it doesn't. What equals success is taking action. And those that don't, question so much and they're not aiming for perfection, they're just out there having conversations, trying things. Even if they don't have all the information, they're still trying things and they're learning firsthand. And that's what actually allows them to then make better decisions faster than anyone else. And that's why they're so successful.
I love that. There's a couple things about what you just mentioned. I mean, one is the willingness to try and to keep going and stay in action. Like, I think people who are able to be almost experimental about everything that they approach versus viewing it as a personal reflection on them, right, are much more able to get back up versus somebody thinking like, oh, this reflects on me. This reflects on how I am doing personally. And I think you're right. There's something to that piece around people who've been accustomed to not being top of the class actually have more skills in the department of trying, right? And getting back up and trying and trying and trying. It was really interesting because I was talking with a friend about this the other day, but here I launch a podcast called Guts, Grit, and Great Business. And of course, I was familiar with Angela Duckworth's book on grit, but the day before I recorded, I think my first solo episode, I was like, I should probably read that book. I haven't read it, right? But what comes out significantly in that book is what you just said, that people often try to attach, and try to measure or predict success based on some of the standard metrics, like who was top of class, or, all of these things that people tend to relate to success. And that's actually not it at all. Like when you look at some of the most elite programs in the world for like Navy SEALs or West Point or some of these things that have, really high requirements, both academically and otherwise, to get in, it's not the folks that are at the very top of the class that actually end up being most likely to succeed.
Correct.
It's those who have the endurance to keep going.
Right. Yeah.
That's
and
it.
I think another way to look at it too is like R&D, right? So if you consider what you're doing on a daily basis as research and development, you're essentially you're trying, right? You're innovating, and
Mm-hmm.
and with innovation comes a lot of failure. But if you look right now at the companies that actually have the biggest R&D budgets, I was actually just having a conversation with a colleague and friend, Jonathan, this earlier today about this, and he was sharing with me that the companies that actually spend the most on R&D, they're companies like Apple, Samsung, Amazon, you know, like they're the top in their industry. They're the biggest brands in the world that most of us know of and think of. And if you just think about that, like, why are they so successful? Well, they're so successful because they're always innovating. Well, we're not seeing all the quote unquote failures that they're having. We're just seeing the successes, but they wouldn't arrive at those successes if they didn't, you know, go through all those experimentations and kind of potential, you know, learnings to kind of have those runaway successes. And that's why it's so important to really focus on the journey and not
Mm-hmm.
just the destination. Because listen, the reality is, and I think what's happening in the world right now with COVID and just everything else, like, life is short. No one knows
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen. And so if we're just so focused on the destination, then it means we're going to be probably quite unhappy most days when we're not getting what we want. But if we just look at what we're doing every single day and go like, yeah, you know, I didn't get what I wanted today. Like, I'm still haven't achieved that goal, but I don't know, like, it was kind of fun and I just learned some
Mm-hmm.
things, and then you can put a smile on your face because you're still probably better off, yeah, than most people. Like, I wrote Act Now, as you mentioned, just in the middle of this whole COVID thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I did it because I wanted to just help people. I saw so many people like frozen with deer in the headlights. They didn't know what to do. They were stuck, and so actually we wrote that book and published it in about 3 weeks just to get it out there. And one of the things that I shared in that book is that there's so many people who are always focused on negatives, like, it's like what's wrong and all that kind of, you know, just. But if you look at, even with everything going on with COVID right now in North America, let's just talk about Canada and the US for a moment, um, Mexico as well, but I'm talking Canada and the US. Like, for most of us, even with all of the challenges going on, which, you know, like, I know they're really bad stuff, lots of people dying, I know people who've been personally affected.
Mm-hmm.
um, Most of us are still better off than the vast majority of the population, even in the best of times, right? We have running water, we have food, we have
Mm-hmm.
electricity, we have a warm, you know, blanket and pillow, like, and
Like
so
we have the option to isolate, right? To socially distance.
exactly, right?
Yes.
And so I know maybe I'm going off on tangent here a little bit, but like, if you take that and transition that or overlay that on top of business, it's the same thing. You can
Mm-hmm.
choose to look at every day in business as, you know, and finding what's not working and get kind of pulled down by that. Or you could look at it and go, well, yeah, that didn't work out, but if I'm going to put those lenses, instead of putting the negative lenses on, I'm going to put the positive lenses on, and I'm going to focus on what did work. And yeah, this didn't work, but now I know I'm one step closer to finding what does work. Or, yeah, you know, it seems like sales are down for the first week, and ooh, it's going to be a bad month. Well, that's okay. I'm just going to keep working hard, and all of a sudden, a week or two go by, and it's like, whoa, we're having the best month we've ever had. Like, those kinds of things happen, but they can
Mm-hmm.
only happen if you're focused enough on the positive and you keep going. But if you stop and you get all negative at any point, then you're just going to get dragged down. You're not going to make the progress that you want.
No, I think that's so right. And I think it really helps for us to surround ourselves with people who help us focus on the positive. I think sometimes we miss the point, especially as we're learning a new skill or learning a new thing, we can be really hard
Mm-hmm.
on ourselves. Like, my
Sure.
personal example is, I feel like last year I was really starting to learn the whole, like, speaking from stage and making an
Mm-hmm.
offer, to a group of entrepreneurs who were a fit that needed my services. And my first event speaking from stage, right? I think maybe I enrolled, 8 or 9, ended up being about 11 people, but I basically covered my costs. And
Mm-hmm.
I was beating myself up pretty hard. It wasn't a hard sell. Like, it was basically a presentation and I had like 2 minutes. It was a very soft, like, here's what's coming next. But I remember talking to one of my mentors later, and he was like, "Are you kidding me? You covered your cost and your travel. Like, that's awesome. My first event went like this, And he told me
Mm-hmm.
his story, and I was like, oh, that just minor shift made me feel like, okay, well, that's information I didn't have and feedback I can take moving forward. And then the next event, I closed like 30% of the room, right? But I think I would have been more intimidated to do it again if I hadn't gotten that feedback about, like,
Right.
no, actually it was a solid start, right? So
Yeah.
I think keeping people in our lives that help us with our perspective is really important. And obviously you're a mentor to hundreds, if not thousands of consultants, and I'm sure help them with that exact piece. So I have one question, because you've got a long series of questions that we didn't even get to on your sheet, and you've got a wide array of expertise. But I'm personally motivated to ask you this question, especially in the
Right.
time of COVID, being a mom to two little people and trying to balance work. How can an entrepreneur get more done in less time?
You got to focus on the right things.
Mm-hmm.
And by the right things, I mean, it's taking like the 80-20 approach, right? Pareto's principle that 80% of the output comes from just 20% of the inputs. So really, you have to identify what are the items, what are the actions that I can take that are going to have the biggest impact. Too often, people kind of fool themselves that into that thinking that they're being productive because they're spending a lot of time doing things. But time spent does not equal true productivity. You can be
Mm-hmm.
very busy doing lots of stuff but not see your business move forward at all. And so more than ever, because we have more distractions, more hype, more noise in the marketplace, it's really, really critical to get focused and to identify what is actually going to move my business or whatever it is in my life that I want to achieve in forward the most, and what's the most direct path. And then to start your day off that way and just be very focused on not necessarily having to do a lot of things, but just do the
Mm-hmm.
few things that are going to have the biggest impact. And when you do those, you can have some really big breakthroughs. And kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, oftentimes those priority items are the ones that are the most uncomfortable for a lot of people. But they're the ones that are going to actually help you the most to grow your business and to see the most progress. But if you just focus on those things and work away, work at them over and over again and get better at them, that's when all of a sudden you start, seeing that things do work, and making a lot more progress, and then it becomes more enjoyable. But you got to first start to do those things. So yeah, we're always focused on not how much can we do and how much can we accomplish, but
Mm-hmm.
what is actually going to move the needle the most, and what's going to have the biggest impact, and what's going to create the most value for those that we want to serve in the community. And that's where we invest into.
No, I love that. I think a lot of people are in a pinch right now, especially parents. As I talk to other people who are parents, running businesses, right, having to homeschool their children. Like, I don't know the ages of your children, but we're having to do so much right now in the same period of time and with very little support,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, I can speak for myself personally. The list feels long, and my ability to get clarity around it feels compromised.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really kind of interesting topic because, uh, especially from a business perspective, the list is never ending.
Right.
I think that's one thing that I've learned a few years back, and once I really embraced it, it kind of set me free, or at least it was some weight off my shoulders, because the list could just keep going every single day. It's like when I come home from the office and I'm talking to my wife or whoever it might be, it's like, you know how things go today? Oh, yeah, they were good. And it's like, yeah, I just got so busy. Oh, like you have more to do. It's like, well, I always have more to do. Like it never finishes. But when I recognize that that's actually the reality, it's also a great separation between work and personal life, because you know that you can't ever finish it. So if you try to, you're just going to be unhappy. And that's why I think
Mm-hmm.
it's even more important, kind of to bring this back to what the topic around less is more, is once you know that, then it's even more important to focus on the things that are going to have the biggest impact, because there's always going to be more stuff. So if you focus on those things, then when you're done for the day, you can just kind of free yourself and go, okay, I got as much as I could done today. I focus on the things that are going to have the biggest impact. It's not going to finish anyways. I don't want to burn myself out and neglect my family or whatever else it might be. So I'm done, and then I'll come back tomorrow and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
restart. And I'm not going to ever get it all done. So I might as well just enjoy that process, focus on creating great impact, serving those that I want to serve, adding value, and that just seems to work.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that the shift, one way I've tried to look at it, because I have been, I'll be honest, for several weeks on end in a chronic state of overwhelm, because I can work until like 1 or 2 at night and I feel behind on client work and everything else. But the other thought I'm having is like, how would it feel to be done with the pile and actually be not have any work, like that wouldn't feel good, to be like
Mm.
I'm done and there's no work lined up next, right? So there's also a gift in that chronic pile of things
Yeah,
coming.
for sure. I mean, I guess there's something to be said for, like, if there's ways to create more leverage in your business, right? With team members or with
Hmm.
processes or productization. So there's things that are certainly important. And that's, we kind of dive into that stuff with a lot of our clients that are looking to create not just more work for themselves, but a lot more freedom. But kind of at a, elemental or, I guess kind of basic level, I think the reality is that there's always stuff to do, and if there isn't something to do, then it usually means you're out of business or you're not in this world anymore. So
That's right. We don't want to be in that place. Well,
no.
and maybe on that point, it's a good transition to talk about your gift. I think you've got a blueprint as a gift. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, there's two things maybe that I could offer people. So the first, as you mentioned, is we have a consulting blueprint. So for anyone that's wants to get into consulting or is already an existing consultant and just wants to kind of access some of the best practices when it comes to developing your messaging, putting a marketing system in place, how to really engage with clients to add more value, and really how to grow a consulting business. You can go to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint, and we have a very detailed guide that you can access for free. The other thing I just wanted to mention is the Act Now book, which we published quite recently, specifically for what's going on in the world. As you said, the subtitle is How Successful Consultants Thrive During Chaos and Uncertainty.
Mm.
That's available. I mean, you can get it on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, also on Audible. But if you want a free copy of that, they can go to consultingsuccess.com/act now.
Awesome. Well, I love that. And I didn't, ahead of this call, I didn't even know that you wrote that book in the midst of COVID. And for anybody listening, Michael got busy and wrote that and published it in 3 weeks. So
Yeah, I mean,
just as a
it was definitely a team effort. I don't want to take the, all that for myself because really everything that we do here is a team effort. I'm very fortunate to have a great team, that we're working here all together. So without them, it wouldn't have happened, but it just felt like it was the right thing to do given what was going on in the marketplace, that there's
Mm,
just a lot of people that need support. And I believe now more than ever, for all of us to come together and support each other, because that's, you know,
absolutely. It's
it
the way
helps.
through. It's the way
Yeah.
through. Well, I am very happy to share both of those resources for anybody listening. You can also find the links to Michael's gift, including a free copy of his new book, on the show notes page, which is legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Michael, I'm so happy that you joined us today. You have such an interesting and fabulous background, and I love sharing you with my community because so many folks need what you have. Any final words, final thoughts for people before we sign off today?
I just want to thank you, Heather, for everything that you're doing. I know you're serving a lot of people and adding a lot of value to them and to their lives. So just, want to appreciate you for what you're putting into the world.
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate that. Well, I couldn't do it without folks like you agreeing to come on and have some, interesting conversations and share your gifts. So it's awesome. I really love it. Well, take care. I'm honored to be connected with you. I will be in touch, but folks, be sure to go check out Michael's business, his resources. They will serve you well. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.